Yeah, Jason Wygant here from Racer X. Something new that we're trying through the pages of Racer X Illustrated, the magazine. We're making them come to life in audio form. We're calling them Racer X Read-Alouds. You can go to racerxonline.com/audio to access these. We'll continue to build a bank or a library of them. Now, normally you'd have to be a subscriber to both read the magazine and to listen to the audio form of the stories in it, but we're going to roll out 3 recent read-alouds to give you an idea of what we're working on. We've produced Day 1 at Daytona. That's Davey Coombs writing and reading about the first ever Daytona Supercross from 50 years ago. Lockdown, which is Davey writing and reading about the coronavirus essentially shutting this sport down over a 1-week span about a month ago. But this will be completely different. This episode, The Cathedral of Motocross, written and read by Rob Andrews, the Englishman, an interesting historical background on one of the wildest and most famous motocross tracks in the world, the old Citadel at Namur, the Cathedral of Motocross. This is a completely different type of motocross track, and a lot of historic battles on the Grand Prix and Motocross of Nations front have happened there. They're not racing there any longer, but this place will live in lore for a long time. An absolutely wild ride. This is like so old school that it's not even like a motocross track in parts. So enjoy Rob Andrews' read. Again, we're rolling out 3 of these as samples, but to listen in the future, you do need to be a subscriber, but it's super cheap. How about 99 cents cheap? 3 issues of digital access for 99 cents. Just go to racerxonline.com/subscribe. And you can also get both the digital and print edition together 3 months for $2.99. That's a short-term offer, though, by the way. So do it now. Sign up now and save some money and get access to the audio. racerxonline.com/subscribe, racerxonline.com/audio. And here is Rob Andrews.
Welcome to a Racer X Read Aloud. This is from the May 2020 issue of Racer X Illustrated, titled The Cathedral of Motocross, written and read by me, Rob Andrews. The following is a condensed excerpt from my new book, The Inside Line, Racing the 500cc World Motocross Championship, which documents my time competing in the 1980s. In central Belgium, at the confluence of the Meuse and Sambre rivers, lies a narrow triangle of steep rocky land, upon which stands a sprawling ancient fortress known as the Citadel of Namur. It is, quite frankly, the last place in the world you'd expect to find a motocross track. But from the 1950s until 2007, the Citadel at Namur had been the beloved venue for the Belgian 500cc Grand Prix, the spiritual home of GP racing, the Monaco of the Motocross World Championship. I hadn't been to Namur until I moved to the 500cc class in 1985, but I'd heard of it, of course. I'd heard that the GP took place at the Citadel, which I incorrectly presumed, like most people, to mean the terraced Stade des Jeux. I had been told that there was a road section, which I thought to be where the circuit maybe crossed a farm track, or perhaps even a public highway. And I'd heard that it was in woodland, so I anticipated some tree roots here and there. None of this sounded like a big deal. I was very wrong, and this I discovered on my first visit in August 1985. On Friday morning, after the relatively short 4-hour drive from Calais, France, my mechanic Ken Bolf and I collected our passes for the event and headed off to the circuit, following the ample GP signposting. This took us up towards the hill, its rocky outcrops protruding through the dark green trees. We drove along narrow, winding and ever steeper roads, passing handsome, well-presented Belgian houses on our way. This to me signified that we must still be some way from the track. Motocross was never held close to people's homes, least of all properties of such grandeur. We came to a sharp right-hand bend. Here we saw more fine homes, but also temporary metal crowd control barriers. Maybe we were close to the circuit after all. As the road swung right, there was a cafe on the left-hand side. We'd call it a pub, at which a couple of dozen people, who were obviously die-hard motocross fans from their attire, sat outside drinking. We wondered why there were barriers outside this establishment. Then, up ahead, I saw my first glimpse of a motocross track. Through an opening in the forest, a narrow strip of nice-looking dirt was exiting from the darkness of the woods right in front of us. This section of track was carved into the side of a steep hill, and its high side featured vertical railway sleepers embedded deep into the ground to create a sturdy and essential retaining wall for the slope above. It was clearly part of the racetrack, but it looked like the track spilled out of the woods directly onto the road on which we were driving. I was confused. I couldn't see where the track went next. I wondered if it perhaps crossed the road in front of us and dropped down into the woods to our right. Maybe this is the road crossing, I thought. However, there was no tape indicating its onward path, and no obvious opening in the trees to our right. It looked like the forest simply spewed the track straight onto the road in front of us, and then it just vanished. Baffled, we drove on past this mysterious, disappearing section of motocross track, which I could now see originated from high in the woods above us to our left. We continued driving along the winding road, curving around with the imposing forest soaring high to our left. As we rounded a long bend, suddenly more track was visible, marked with printed plastic tape and bordered with more portable crowd barriers and advertising hoardings. The track appeared to dart mysteriously up and down short, sharp climbs between the closely spaced trees. People milled around, some walking the sections of track and some standing by the advertising-covered barriers drinking beer. Many more were walking on the road and impeding our by now slow progress. Vehicles were parked all around, many of them on the grass verges at the side of the road, squeezed in wherever they could fit. Some were campers, some were cars, and most had small tents pitched alongside. There were many vans too, with awnings and trade stands set up beside them. Eventually we arrived at what appeared to be the summit of this climb and came upon the pit entrance. We found a place to pit and got set up. The ground was tarmac, a rare treat in a 1980s Grand Prix paddock. After getting our bikes through technical control, Ken, also a Namur first-timer, and I headed off to check out the track. The Stade des Jeux had been hidden from view until now, but as we arrived at the Esplanade, the flat open area where the start was situated, it revealed itself in all its magnificent glory. I imagine it was like a gladiator seeing the Colosseum for the first time. It was larger and more impressive than I had imagined. A wide, classical, colonnade-type building with a flat roof supported by a series of columns to create several open-fronted rooms within. At its base was a terrace of stone steps from which thousands of fans would watch and cheer the next day. The start gate lay just below the Stade des Jeux and faced away from the stadium, ensuring that the bark of 40 2-500s would point directly at the packed terraces. The start took off down a 100-metre straight, point 1 on the track map, before curving right through a fast, wide first corner. To the left of this sweeping first turn was the jump, where we would fly out from the darkness of the forest to complete one lap and start the next. The long first turn led into a straight back towards the stadium structure before turning 180 degrees right, then left through the Esplanade's infield section from where the mechanics would be signalling. From there, the track passed behind the start gate and disappeared into the woodland. For those watching from the Esplanade on Sunday, they would not see a bike again for more than 3 minutes. The first section after the Esplanade, numbers 2 and 3 on the map, was quite quick and open, swooping gently one way, then the other, across grassy parkland and between widely spaced trees. Just 100 metres or so to our right, there were expensive homes, and it seemed strange that we would be racing so close to an area of affluent housing. Beyond their roofs were long-reaching views of the city of Namur and the Belgian countryside in the distance. Before long, the course narrowed as it headed under an old cast-iron pedestrian bridge, number 4 on the map. The slim tarmac road passing beneath the structure had been covered in dirt, and the stone pillars of the bridge were protected by hay bales. Just beyond the bridge, the road returned to bare tarmac, number 5 on the map. This I remembered as the spot where we had driven into the pits earlier. The short 40-metre section of asphalt was sure to become slippery as mud got dragged onto its surface. "Well, at least we've seen the road section," I remarked to Ken. The track returned to dirt once more and continued downhill, deeper into the forest. It became tighter, more twisty, and increasingly narrow as it descended into denser woodland. Here the track flowed inexorably downhill and off camber, with the road we had driven along earlier to our left and the higher parts of the wooded Namur hillside to our right. A couple of times the track darted briefly uphill, 0.6 and 7 on the map, before turning sharp left around a single tree. It then plunged back down toward the road and the metal barriers. Here, the fans would be close enough to touch the riders. Before long, we reached the first of several blind drops that we would encounter on our way down to the lowest part of the circuit, number 8 on the map. This one comprised a steep 45-degree downhill interrupted by a lateral dirt road crossing halfway down. The track dropped sharply into what would be a wrist-jarring impact as the slope became abruptly horizontal where it met the road. It was sure to become bumpy and rutted at this juncture. If the bike was straight and under control at this point, the second downhill part wouldn't be too difficult. There were 2 further blind drops along the way. One was steep and would require hard braking to avoid a catastrophic flat landing at the bottom. The other was far shallower and could be taken much faster. The tricky thing would be remembering which one was which. Eventually we came to a sharp right turn, number 9 on the map, which took us along a narrow dirt road cut into the side of the hill. This fast straight was bordered by tall and sturdy wooden fencing on the left, which kindly hid the terrifyingly steep drop down to the public highway a few hundred feet below. As we neared the end of this tree-lined tunnel, number 10 on the map, we could see daylight. Here the dirt and the forest ended, and I realised that this was the disappearing section of track which had confused us on our drive up to the paddock earlier in the day. It was now quite apparent where the track went. It spilled out of the woods and straight up the asphalt road that we had been driving along. I was staggered. Seriously? I thought to myself. It goes along the road? The track just continued arrow straight along the tarmac towards a jump way off in the distance. This was no mere road crossing. The tarmac section went on for 200 metres or more. Vehicles were still driving along it, as it temporarily continued to serve as the main entrance road to the top of the citadel. On our right-hand side was the bar we had noticed on our drive in. It was called the Chalet du Monument, number 11 on the map, and the dozen drinking fans from earlier had swelled to about 4 times that number. Most of them appeared to be British. At the end of the road section, a fast jump, number 12 on the map, took us up onto an elevated straight. What had initially looked like dirt was in fact an ancient cobblestone road. This headed straight towards an awesome stone fortification at the far end, number 13 on the map. I estimated we would be racing at perhaps 60 miles per hour directly towards this solid medieval masonry before braking as late as possible on slippery cobblestones. The stone walls were protected by just a few old mattresses and sheets of plywood. It was not a section of track for a panicking novice rider. At the castle wall, the track turned immediately right up a ridiculously steep and slippery bank which had no run-up. A careful decision would need to be made as to whether to select the tightest, quickest line through the corner, but risk not even making it up the hill, or take the longer outside line, which would guarantee a safer ascent, but leave the door open for a block pass. Once up that short climb, the track made its way up the staircase, a series of fast climbs interrupted by short plateaus, number 14 on the map. Like the downhill drops we had encountered on the first half of the circuit, some of these could be taken faster than others, and the entire section curved slightly as it rose for an added level of difficulty. To the left of the staircase section was a spectacular and ancient dry moat. This stone-walled precipice, 10 metres or more deep, lay right alongside where we would be racing. Separating us racers from that drop was nothing more than some temporary metre-high fencing. To crash over there would have been serious, if not fatal. However, not once during this or any subsequent times that I walked or raced this track did I even notice this magnificent and potentially deadly feature. I suppose this is a good illustration of how we as riders were simply focused on one thing, the track, and how we could find the quickest way around it. The scenery was unimportant. Once at the top of the staircase, another short tree-lined straight led to a tight chicane, number 15 on the map. From there, an awkward, off-camber, tree-root-littered drop fed into a left-hand corner, number 16. The track then headed out towards the finish, where we would leap out of the blackness of the forest and into the sun-dazzling brightness of the Esplanade to begin another lap. Racing at Namur was everything I had expected and more. The track was really long, twice the length of most circuits. As a result, it was really difficult to learn. Normally, within 10 minutes of practice, I'd be able to close my eyes and visualise the entire course and my precise lines around it. I would know every turn, berm, rut and bump on the track. But at Namur, even after 2 hour-long practice sessions, I still wasn't certain of where it went. So many sections looked alike. Some turns were almost identical, and the approaches to the blind drops on the first half of the lap were equally difficult to differentiate. I would find myself braking for a crest, only to discover that it was one that I could have taken much faster. On my debut, in 1985, I failed to qualify after crashing and cutting my elbow badly in practice, but I was smitten by the Namur experience. In subsequent years, I couldn't wait to get out on track for each session. I would have my bike taken down to the Parc Fermé 45 minutes before the session even started, just to guarantee that I was first rider out. Not only did this ensure a clear, traffic-free first run in time sessions, but the sheer exhilaration of being the first man out on track was a spine-tingling experience. As crazy and perilous as it was, I was never intimidated by Namur. I never feared its trees, stonework, precipices, or countless other dangers. Although bad luck seemed to prevent me recording anything better than an 8th place finish, that didn't stop it from being my favourite track on the Grand Prix circuit. It was unique and a place where I loved racing. Namur held its last race in 2007. There are constant calls for its return to the GP calendar, but I completely disagree. From a practical perspective, its layout, space restrictions and facilities are incompatible with modern-day Grand Prix motocross. I imagine too that today's riders would be up in arms about a track so preposterous, unusual and outside their comfort zone. They would consider it too tight, too dangerous and simply too absurd as a Grand Prix venue. Good. When Namur by some chance reinstated as a Grand Prix venue, it would never be the same. It would be brought up to date and hence irreversibly ruined by the guardians of the present-day World Motocross Championship. I don't wish to see Namur butchered into an overworked, jump-filled, energy drink-sponsored modern GP track. That would be a tragedy.
And that is Rob Andrews. You can access everything if you're a subscriber. We now have the magazine completely, totally readable in digital form. So if you prefer doing your reading on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, you can access it no problem. It reads well. It scrolls up and down in an addictive form, just like scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Or, of course, you can go old school and get the magazine in the mail. Go to racerxonline.com/subscribe. Digital access for 3 months, only 99 cents. Digital and print access for 3 months, only $2.99. But that's a short-term offer, so sign up now. And it will also get you access to Read Alouds. We've got stories that we're working on right now. We got a magazine going to print right now. I'm recording this on April 23rd. We'll have a brand new issue coming your way. That'll be new audio read-alouds, new stories that you cannot access unless you go through the subscription portal. So do it. It's cheap. Keep yourself entertained while the world waits to return somewhat to normal. Thanks for listening.